Okay, so let me show you all the different things that the object menu can help you accomplish in Shortcuts Lot 2. The first thing I'm going to do is place an object or an element on my mat. So I went and clicked there. I'm going to grab my selection tool and I'm going to resize this heart. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to show you, we want to make sure that we have the element selected or highlighted. Okay, and you can tell that it's highlighted because it's got the handles available and you can see that it's got this little box around it. All right, so let's go under Object and click Transform, and then let's click on Move. Okay, the first thing you're going to see is the absolute position. Okay, so right now, this is giving us the X and Y coordinates. Okay, you can actually modify this up in this section here in the Properties panel. This is just another way of doing it. So we can change this and move this. Let's move it to the absolute position 0, 0, and hit Apply. Okay, so there you go. The upper leftmost part of this element is located here at the 0, 0 point. Okay, now in addition to the absolute position, you have an option for relative position as well. Okay, so if we select this and we type in 2 and 2, okay, so 2 inches on the x-axis, 2 inches on the y-axis, and click Apply, it's going to move it 2 inches on the x-axis and 2 inches on the y-axis. Now, if we put -1 and -1 here and click Apply, it moves it -1 on the x-axis and -1 on the y-axis. So let me show you again here. I'm going to just place this right in the middle. Okay, and we can go back to Object, Transform, and Move. Now if we go to the relative position, so basically what the relative position does is it moves the object a certain amount based on its current position, so relative to its current position. So right now, if I wanted to move this -1 inch on the X and -1 inch on the Y, it should end up right about here, okay? Because that's 1 inch negative X and 1 inch negative Y from its current position. So we'll hit Apply, and there it is. Now I can see this option being used more when you're trying to be very precise with your movements, but other than that, I would not foresee using this on a day-to-day basis in Shortcuts Lot 2. And you can click OK, and there you go. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go ahead and place another element on my mat. I'm going to place a star here. And I'm going to go to Object, Transform, and click on Rotate. Now you can click on this drop down and select Angle or Skew. And under Angle, let's say we put 45 degrees and hit Apply. Well, it basically rotates it 45 degrees. You can also skew it. This value will skew it on the x-axis. This value will skew it on the y-axis. You can hit Apply and you see what it does. It kind of really just skews it so you have a little bit of a different perspective on how you're looking at it. Okay, so that just takes a little bit of practice manipulating those values to see what type of results you might get. Okay, now you can also change the angle by simply just rotating it here. Okay, it does the same thing. So the angle option under Rotate is just another way of manipulating the angle using this handle here. Okay, so we can close that. And I'm going to delete this element. I'm going to place another heart on my mat. Okay, you can go to Object, and you can go to Transform, and you can click on Scale. Now you'll notice here that you can scale it based on the current dimensions or by a percentage. Okay, under Dimensions here, you've got the width and the height, which is exactly the same thing that you can do here. Okay, so this is just another way of doing the same thing. And again, here's the Keep Proportions button. So if we click this and we specify that we want to change it to 4 inches wide, keeping proportions, we don't really need to alter this value here because it's going to resize it to 4 inches wide and keep the proportions when it does that. So there you go, okay? Now it's 4 inches wide and it automatically adjusted it to 3.28 inches. Okay, now as an alternative, let's say that you want to change it based on the percentage. Okay, so right now it's at 100%. Let's say we want to make it 400% its size. Okay, so we can do that by typing in 400 and hitting Apply. Okay, and now it's 400% larger than it was. So that's really all that does. Okay, so we can delete that. Okay, so the next thing we'll notice under the object menu is the arrange option. Okay, and it's bring to front, bring forward, send backward, send to back. Okay. Now you may have actually seen something like this in PowerPoint. Okay, and I'll show you how this works. Let's go ahead and take a heart. Okay, we'll make it real big. And then I'm going to lay some text on my mat as well. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Now let's say that this is on top. Okay, now when you click here, you click on the word love. If you click here, you click on the heart. Okay, but let's say that we make the heart a little bit smaller. And let's say we make it real small so that it's barely bigger than the word love. Okay, now looking at the mat, we know that everything's two-dimensional. Now what we can do in Sure Cuts a Lot is actually specify which object is in the front and which object is in the back, so we can determine the layering of these elements. And this is just going to help us, and this just allows us more control over the elements on our mat. And this will also come into play when we start using the path section here. Okay, and we'll get more into that when we discuss the path section. But for now, you'll notice right now I have the word love selected. Okay, now I can go to object and I can arrange and I can bring it to front, which means that it's all the way up at the front. It's on top, basically. Okay, I can go ahead and arrange it and send it to back. Okay, now if I do that, you'll notice that if I click here, it looks like I'm clicking on the word love, okay, on the O in the word love, but I'm actually selecting the heart, okay, and that's because I took the word love and I sent it to the back. So technically, the heart is on top. And despite the fact that it looks like I'm clicking on the O, it still selects the heart. So now watch this. If I have the heart selected, I can go to Object, Arrange, and I can either send it backwards or send it to back. In this case, since we're only dealing with two elements, they both are going to do the same thing. Clicking on Send to Back will bring it all the way to the backmost portion of our layer, okay? Now clicking on Bring to Front will bring it to the front or upmost portion of our layer. Now the bring to front and send to back options are going to be more useful when you're dealing with more than two elements. Okay, so we've got the heart selected, and I'm going to go ahead and send it backwards or send it to back. It doesn't really matter since there's only two objects on my mat, okay? So I'm going to send it to back, and now that the heart is in back, you'll notice that when I go to click on the O in the word love, it will actually select the word love, okay? Because love is now in the front because we sent the heart to the back. So let's do it again. Let's take the word love, let's go to Object, and let's send it backwards or send it to back. Okay, now watch. If we click on the letter O, it will actually select the heart because we took the word love and sent it backwards or sent it to the back. So basically, this section under Object and Arrange helps you arrange the various objects on your mat. So let's do this. Let's take one more object. And let's do this. So now, all right, so let's select this shape, go under Object, Arrange, and let's bring it to the front. This is going to basically put it right on top. Okay, now I'm going to take it, and you'll notice here, I'm going to cover both of these other objects. You can see that no matter where I click, whether it be on the heart, on the word love, I'm always going to select the shape because it's in front. Okay, now watch this. If we take this and we go to Object, Arrange, and if we send it backward, which means that it will go back one place, okay? Now if we send it to back, it'll go all the way to the back. But if we send it backwards, it's going to end up in between the word love and the heart. Okay, so let's click on that. And now you'll notice if I click here, I'm selecting the heart because now the heart is in front. Now I can't click on the word love because it's all the way in back. Now if I go back to Object and I go to Arrange and I send it to the back, I'm sending it all the way to the back. I can then click on the heart, and if I click here, I can click on the word love, okay? So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what this arrange option does. All right, so I'm going to start a clean mat here. All right, and the next thing you'll notice here, and it's grayed out right now, is the group and ungroup option. Okay, now there's a couple ways of using these options. First, we're going to add a heart Okay, we're going to make it about this big. And I'm going to add another heart. And I'm going to make it about this big and place it right here. Okay. So now let's say that we want to take and we want to be able to resize these together as a group. Now you'll notice that right now, if I try to click on these, they're still individual elements, okay? So what we can do is if we draw a box around both of these. Now what I'm doing is I'm just clicking on the side here. I'm not actually clicking on any of these elements. I'm clicking just below them. I'm going to click and hold. And as you're holding the mouse, you'll notice that you've got this little box here. Okay, if you take and drag this box around an element or multiple elements, you'll select all of those elements that are inside that box. Now what you can do is you can go to Object and you can group. Okay, so we're going to click Group. And now watch, if I deselect, and no matter where I click, these are now grouped as one object. Okay, now they're not going to cut as one object, but they're grouped as one object, so you can resize them together, you can rotate them together, you can move them together, and so on and so forth. If at any time you want to ungroup these, you can just basically make sure you have it selected, go to Object, and Ungroup. Now watch, if I deselect, I can go ahead and click on these again by themselves. Another little tidbit here. Now, these elements, you'll notice that they are not grouped right now. But if you wanted to temporarily group them together so you could move them together, what you can do is draw that box around them. Okay, now you'll notice that they're still separate. I can still move them separately. Okay, you see that? Now, if you take a box and draw it around these objects, it will select them and temporarily put them into a group. So I can still resize, move, and rotate. And then if I deselect, I can still click on these individually. Okay, so basically, if you select these and go to Object and hit Group, it creates a more permanent group. Okay, it's not completely permanent because you can still ungroup, but you don't have to always create a box around these. So that's just another way of grouping elements. Okay, so again, I can go to Object and click Ungroup, and there they are. They're separated one more time. Now let me give you another example of the ungroup feature. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and lay some text on my mat. Okay, so I'm just going to type a little caption here. Now you'll notice that when I click on this, it's all one piece, okay? You can't edit these individually. But what if I wanted to? What if I wanted to make certain letters bigger or rotate them and get a little bit more creative with this word? Well, the first step is to make sure that it's highlighted. Go to Object and ungroup it. Okay, so now when I click on that, you'll notice I can click on these letters individually. I can go in and I can make the L bigger, I can make this L bigger. I kind of don't like that, so I'm just going to go here and make the N bigger and make the H bigger. Okay, I'm going to move the H over. All right, so now that I've got these letters resized, I can go in and I can create a box around this entire word, okay, to select it all, or as an alternative, you can just right-click on the mat and click Select All, and that does the same thing. Now, if you have something else on the mat, like a star, okay, and then if you click Select All, it will also include that star. Okay, so you only use Select All when you're sure that you want to select all. Otherwise, you can just draw the little box around the items that you want to select. You go back to Object, and you can group it again. Okay, so now no matter where I click, I've got one element that I can resize as one. I can rotate, resize, and move around, okay, just as it was before after the modifications that I made. All right, now the next item you'll notice under the Object menu is the Break Apart feature. Okay, so I'm going to create a new mat here. Okay, so we're going to go under the Fall Shapes Library, which I already have selected here, and I'm going to click on this turkey dinner element. Okay, now you'll notice that as I make this a little bit bigger, you'll notice that we have some overlapping cuts, and we can get a more clear picture of what that's going to look like by clicking on the Preview button here. Okay, so you see that this cut is going to intersect with this cut, and this cut's going to intersect with the leg, and so on and so forth. Now, we're probably going to want to cut these out of different colored paper. Okay, so what are we supposed to do if all we have is just this one element and we can't pull it apart? All right, so what you can do in this case, you can go to Object and you can click Break Apart. Okay, and what Break Apart does is it takes every single path, okay, and a path is basically a closed shape. So in this case, a closed shape would be this leg, the turkey, the wing, the plate, and so on. All right, so I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to click Object, and I'm going to click Break Apart. All right, now check out what happens. You can actually click on each individual path that makes up this entire element. Okay, so for example, here's the plate. I can click on the plate. I can move it aside. Okay, I can click on the wing. I can click on the actual turkey. Okay, now here's the legs. I can just click on these here. Okay, I can move those out of the way. So we've taken the element and we've broken it apart into each individual shape. Okay, these are all closed paths that we can now modify individually. And now what we can do is we can highlight this, go to Edit and Copy. Okay, and we can create a new page. And we can go to Edit and Paste. Okay, so now there it is. And I can delete it from here. Okay, and actually I can take this one, right click, copy, go to page 2, right click, paste. Okay, so there's that. All right, now let's do this. Let's take these. I can go to right click, and instead of copying, if you want to take something and permanently move it from one page to another, instead of copying, you can cut it. Okay, so we can cut and it disappears. I'm going to create a new page. Here's page 3. I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so there it is. I'm going to go here and cut. And I'm going to go here and paste. Okay, so these are all separated now. Okay, so we've got the wing. I think I'm going to take the wing, I'm going to cut it. I'm going to put it on the same layer as the turkey leg because they're going to be the same color. Okay, so I just pasted it there. Go back to the original. And I'm going to take my plate, right click and cut, and create a new page for that, and just paste it there. Okay, so now you'll notice we've broken it apart and we've separated it onto different pages so that we can cut them out of these corresponding colors. Okay, so that's basically what the break apart feature allows you to do. It allows you to take and break apart an image that may be a little bit more complex. Now, for example, this apple. Okay, this apple, there's nothing to break apart because there's only one line that goes around. Okay, now if it had something inside of it, then we could break it apart. Or if it had another layer to it, then we could break it apart. But since it's just one continuous line that begins and ends on the same path, there's nothing to break apart. Okay, so finally, the last few items under the Object menu include Hide, Show All, Lock, and Unlock All. Let me create a new mat here. Okay, and I'm just going to place a few objects on the mat. I'm just going to do a circle. Okay, and another shape here. Okay, now if I highlight this and go to Object, I can hide it. Okay, then I can go to Object and Show All. So it'll basically show it to me again after I hit it. Okay, so I can go to Object, hide this one. I can go to Object and hide that one. Now you can still click on them, but they're hidden. Okay, and if you ever want to bring them back, just go to Object and Show All. So that's what that does. It's very simple, and it's basically there to help you organize or remove things that you don't need to currently see. The hide and show feature is useful if you're using the mat as a canvas for a design that you're just working on and trying to figure out where you're going to place certain pieces or what fits where. And if you just want to kind of hide something temporarily, you have that ability. Okay. Now also, you can highlight these. You can go to Object and you can click Lock. Now what that does is it prevents you from even clicking on it. Okay. So here you'll notice I'm clicking on this one and I can move it and do whatever I want with it. But with this one, if I click on it, the little handles won't come up, so I cannot edit it at all. So if I go back to Object and I unlock all, I can go ahead and click and rotate it and resize it, move it however I want. Okay, but again, I can highlight it, go to Object and lock it. I can click on this one and lock it as well. And now I cannot edit them at all. So if I wanted to place another part on there and I want to make sure that I'm not going to alter those at all. I have them set in a specific position. That's a good way of doing it. You can just go ahead and highlight it and lock it. Now, if I want to move this heart around, no matter where I click, I can't click on these and move them out of their place, okay? And then when I'm done, if I do want to move them, I can go back to Object and click Unlock All. And there you go. You can go ahead and manipulate your objects once again.